While doing DoorDash, I delivered to a gated apartment. My fiancée opened the door in lingerie, then froze when she recognized me. She whispered, "Why are you here?" Then a guy's voice from inside said, "Baby, who is it?" On a cold Thursday evening, I was out doing DoorDash to cover the last expenses for our wedding. I never told Elise that I had taken extra shifts because I wanted the honeymoon to feel effortless for her. I had been working 10-hour days and delivering food until midnight. Also, she could have everything she dreamed of. That night, I received an order for a gated luxury apartment complex at the edge of town. I had never delivered there before because it required special access, but the app directed me straight to the gate code screen without requiring a resident to buzz me in. That alone felt strange. The place was far too expensive for typical DoorDash customers, and most residents ordered private concierge services instead. As I drove through the wide iron gates, I felt a pressure settle under my ribs. I had no reason to expect trouble, but something in my body reacted before my mind caught up. The bed appeared the moment I walked up to the second-floor hallway and stopped outside apartment 2F. The air smelled faintly like expensive candles mixed with perfume Elise wore on date nights. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe the complex used similar scents. Maybe a neighbor had the same taste. Yet as I lifted my hand to knock, my pulse started climbing. I had always believed we were unbreakable, that she was the one person I could trust without second-guessing anything. Now I was standing in front of a door that felt too familiar in a place she had never mentioned. When the door swung open and Elise stood there in lingerie, the question formed instantly. What was she doing there? And why was she dressed like that? I froze. She froze. The bag of food in my hand felt weightless, almost disconnected from the rest of me. Elise's eyes widened as though someone had pressed a shock collar against her spine. She didn't make a sound at first. Her mouth parted just slightly, a faint tremor in her jaw. I had seen her in lingerie before, but never this set. Deep burgundy, trimmed lace, straps across her hips. She wore a thin silk robe, untied and falling open. She looked like she was prepared for someone, but definitely not for me. Her first reaction wasn't embarrassment. It was fear. She stepped forward as if trying to block the inside of the apartment with her body. Her hand shot out to grab the frame of the door, and she pressed her shoulder against it like she was guarding an entrance during a fire drill. She whispered something that sounded like she was trying to breathe through a collapsed lung. It wasn't even a question at first, more like she couldn't form words. The second attempt was clearer. She asked why I was there. Not how I found her. Not why I was delivering food. Just why I was there. Before I could speak, a man's voice drifted from deeper inside the apartment. It was casual, loud, confident. He asked who was at the door. My entire stomach flipped. It wasn't just a voice. It was a tone men used when they were relaxed around someone they thought they knew well. Elise panicked. She turned her head quickly, pressing her back against the door frame. She told him to wait, but she did it in a soft, frantic way, as if she didn't want me to hear her tone. That was worse than anything she could have said outright. If she had acted confused or innocent, maybe my brain would have scrambled for explanations. Instead, she acted caught. I took a step forward. She stiffened and tried to hold the door half closed. That gesture alone told me everything. Elise wasn't supposed to be opening that door. She wasn't supposed to be seeing me. She wasn't supposed to have food delivered by the man she was engaged to marry. She wasn't supposed to be there with someone else. I asked her whose apartment it was. She didn't answer. She looked down at the floor like she was trying to invent a story in real time. Then she said a coworker lived there and that he was going through something. The excuse made no sense. If she had wanted to lie, she could have chosen anything better than that. Instead, she seemed confused, like she was trying to fix everything with the first fragments of explanations she could grab. The man approached the door before she could stop him. He walked into view wearing nothing but athletic shorts. His hair was messy, still damp from a shower. He wasn't embarrassed to see me. He just looked irritated that someone interrupted their evening. He asked Elise who I was. She didn't answer. She looked at the floor again, then at me as though waiting for me to decide whether to cause a scene or walk away. I didn't walk away. I stepped fully into the doorway. Elise flinched, but didn't push me. Something deeper than anger rose in me. A kind of clarity that came when you realized your future had just been lifted off its tracks. I told the guy to tell me who he was. His name was Stefan. He said it in a flat, annoyed voice. He didn't seem like the type to get shaken easily, which added another twist to the moment. I asked him if this was his apartment. He said yes, and that's when I noticed something over Elise's shoulder. A purse she owned, a jacket she wore to work, a pair of sandals in the hallway. All hers. Stefan wasn't the visitor. Elise was. The next question I asked wasn't polite. I wanted to know how long this had been happening. Elise rushed to answer before Stefan could speak, but her words were hesitant. She claimed it started recently. She kept insisting it was complicated. Stefan scoffed and said it wasn't recent at all. He said they had known each other for months and that she had been spending a lot of nights there. Elise snapped at him. Stefan shrugged like her outrage meant nothing. While they bickered, I noticed a piece of mail on the counter behind them. My name jumped out at me. My heart slammed so hard against my chest that it felt like it shook the entire apartment. I stepped past Elise without permission and walked straight to the counter. The envelope had my name printed on it, but the address belonged to the apartment I was standing in. I opened the envelope without hesitation. Inside was a printed confirmation of a lease agreement with the complex's logo at the top. It listed Elise as the primary resident and me as the emergency contact. Her signature was on the final page. The date showed she had signed it 3 months earlier. 3 months. Not recent. Not accidental. Not something she had stumbled into. She had been paying for this apartment for a quarter of a year without ever telling me. And she had used my information to secure the lease. My chest tightened in a way that felt physical. I asked her whether she lived here with him. She shook her head too quickly, the denial frantic and hollow. Stefan didn't deny anything. He said she spent more nights here than anywhere else. She spun toward him and begged him to shut up, which only made it clearer. I lifted the lease and pointed at it. She went silent. Every excuse she tried to produce dried up in her throat. Her hands shook so violently she gripped the robe to steady herself. The robe slipped off one shoulder before she caught it. She looked like someone whose world cracked open. Everything in the room stopped. Even Stefan looked uncomfortable now. Elise's eyes darted around, searching for a way out of the moment, but there wasn't one. Not with the lease in my hand. Not with Stefan half-dressed behind her. Not with her clothes and personal items scattered around the apartment. I asked her why she had done it. She whispered that she needed space. She said she wasn't sure about the wedding. She said she didn't want to hurt me, but didn't know how to tell me. She kept speaking in circles, jumping between reasons as though one of them might patch the hole she had ripped open. None of them did. I stepped past her again, walked through the living room, and opened the bedroom door. I needed to see the full truth. The bed was unmade. Her earrings sat on the nightstand. 2 wine glasses wilted on the dresser. It was obvious she had been living a double life with a confidence I never suspected she possessed. She followed me inside, grabbing my arm and begging me not to jump to conclusions. Stefan stayed in the living room, watching with a distant, bored expression. He seemed detached from the chaos, as though this wasn't new to him. That made everything worse. I walked back to the living room and told Stefan that I wanted him out. He crossed his arms and refused. Elise rushed between us again, terrified of escalation. Fear ran through her movements like electricity. We weren't violent men, but the tension carried weight. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten him. I didn't make any dramatic statements. I simply told her to step aside and tell me the truth without twisting it. She sank onto the couch. Her posture collapsed into something small, something cornered. She confessed she had been unsure about our engagement for months. She said she liked the excitement she felt with Stefan, but she didn't know whether she wanted to leave me. She admitted she wanted both lives and didn't want to choose between them. She said she didn't tell me about the apartment because she was afraid I would end things. I stood there silently, absorbing every word. None of it softened the betrayal. None of it answered the deeper question of how she had hidden something so enormous from the person she claimed to love. When I finally spoke, I told her the truth. I told her that I didn't believe she was confused. I believed she was comfortable. She had been using me while building a separate life with someone else. The moment broke something in her face. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. Her hand hovered in the air like a piece of her had disconnected from reality. I turned to leave. She jumped up and grabbed my wrist with both hands, pleading. She insisted we could talk tomorrow. She insisted she could explain everything in a clearer way if I just gave her time. I pulled my wrist free. I told her tomorrow didn't exist in the way she imagined. As I walked out the door, Stefan's voice followed me. He told Elise he warned her this would happen. She shouted at him to shut up again. The hallway outside felt colder than the night air. Every step down the stairs felt heavier than the one before. I reached the parking lot, climbed into my car, and sat there breathing in the silence. The apartment loomed above me like a lid closing on the last several years of my life. Part 1 ends with the truth exposed, but not yet finished. The real fallout had only started. The consequences had not even begun. I sat in my car for several minutes, trying to get air back into my lungs. The steering wheel felt cold under my hands. The dashboard clock glowed in quiet judgment as the reality of what I had seen forced itself into place. I had not misunderstood anything. Elise had not slipped into a bad situation by accident. She had built an entirely separate life, paid for an apartment with my information attached to the lease, and invited someone else to share it with her. Once my breathing steadied, I drove home. The apartment we shared felt unfamiliar. I turned on the lights and stood in the doorway, staring at the living room we had decorated together. Every frame on the wall became a reminder of a promise she had broken. The couch we picked out last year suddenly felt like a place I had been tricked into sitting. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and began packing clothes. I didn't think about where I was going. I only knew I wouldn't stay there when Elise decided to come home. She arrived far sooner than expected. Her car door slammed in the parking lot, followed by hurried footsteps up the stairs. She burst into the apartment without knocking. She looked frantic, still wearing the same robe from Stefan's place. She had thrown on sweatpants under it, but her hair was still wet from the shower she clearly intended to take with him. She called my name before she saw me. When she walked into the bedroom and found me zipping the bag, her face drained of color. She reached for the door frame as if she needed something solid to hold. She started talking all at once, begging me not to leave. She swore she had panicked, swore she had only gone there to think, swore Stefan meant less to her than I imagined. Her arguments tangled together into a single mess that revealed nothing but desperation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I told her the truth. Our engagement had been built on trust, and that trust had collapsed the moment she opened that door in lingerie. She tried to argue that people make mistakes, but I reminded her that this wasn't a mistake. A mistake doesn't last 7 months. A mistake doesn't include a secret lease. A mistake doesn't involve someone else answering from inside a bedroom. She switched tactics and began crying, insisting she needed to explain everything. She tried to take the bag from my hands. I pulled it away and told her I was leaving for the night. She followed me to the hallway and out the door, still pleading. When she reached for my arm, I stepped aside, forcing her to stop. Down the stairs, a neighbor watched from his balcony. He recognized Elise from previous mornings when she returned home late. His expression made something in her face twitch. She retreated inside the apartment without saying another word. I got into my car and drove away before she could return. I stayed in a cheap motel on the edge of town. The place smelled like bleach and old carpet, but it gave me room to think. I lay on the stiff mattress and replayed the scene over and over. Elise's voice, Stefan's presence, the lease with my name on it. Every piece slotted perfectly into a pattern I hadn't wanted to see. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, unread messages, walls of excuses, all from Elise. I ignored them. When I finally checked my notifications, I found a message from one of our mutual friends, someone who had always been close to Elise. The message was blunt. She told me she had known something was off months ago. She said Elise had been confiding in people behind my back, claiming she felt suffocated by the engagement. She said Elise had been going to a fitness studio with Stefan long before she admitted anything to me. She said Elise had gotten close to him before I even proposed. She thought I deserved to know. That detail pierced everything. Elise had built the lie while saying yes to the most important moment in our relationship. I responded with a brief acknowledgement, then put my phone face down. Each new piece of information made the betrayal feel older, deeper, and more deliberate. Later that day, I returned to our apartment to gather more of my things. Elise had clearly not slept. Her face looked exhausted, and the panic had only grown sharper. She tried to block the doorway and started talking faster than yesterday. She begged me to understand that she had been overwhelmed. She insisted she had never meant to hurt me. She tried to hug me, but I stepped away. She asked to talk inside. I refused. She followed me around the living room like a shadow. Every time I reached for something, she tried to hold my hand or stand close enough that I had to shift away. She said she had ended things with Stefan. She said she had told him she loved me. She said she wanted to fix everything. I asked her where his jacket came from. The one I saw at the apartment with the embroidered initials. She froze. That silence confirmed more than any confession. I picked up a stack of documents from the kitchen counter. Bills, insurance forms, receipts. Then I noticed something else under them. A copy of the same lease I saw at Stefan's place. This version was earlier. Signed 4 months ago instead of 3. She had signed multiple lease drafts. She had planned it far earlier than she told either of us. When I held up the papers, she lunged forward and tried to take them. Her voice cracked as she insisted it wasn't what it looked like. I told her it looked like she had planned a life without me long before I knew anything was wrong. She collapsed onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. I didn't move toward her. I continued gathering my things. She didn't raise her head until I started heading toward the door. She jumped up and blocked my path again. Not aggressively, just with the frantic energy of someone clinging to a sinking board. She asked where I was going. I told her the truth. I didn't know yet, but I knew I wasn't staying with her. She said we could go to couples counseling. She said she would move out of Stefan's apartment. She said she would cut him off entirely. Her voice shook every time Stefan's name appeared. She wasn't ready to give up the story she had built. I walked around her and opened the door. She followed me onto the landing, trying to keep her voice calm in case neighbors overheard. I didn't stop walking. She didn't stop pleading. The last thing she said before I descended the stairs was a desperate promise that she would fix everything. I didn't turn around. I spent the next night at my friend's place. He offered his couch without asking for details, but when I finally told him, he looked like he wanted to break something on my behalf. He asked if I planned to confront Stefan. I told him the confrontation wasn't with Stefan. It was with Elise and the life she had built behind my back. The following morning proved that the situation was far from over. I woke to find my phone buzzing repeatedly. Dozens of calls. Texts from Elise. Then something unexpected. A message request from an unknown number. I opened it. It was Stefan's ex. She had heard everything. She had been following Elise's behavior at the studio for months. She had screenshots. She had details Elise never intended for me to see. She said she wanted to talk. That was the moment everything shifted again. Part 2 ends here, with the ground opening wider, and the consequences beginning to spread beyond Elise's apartment and into every part of her life. Stefan's ex, Marina, wanted to meet in person. She said she didn't trust messages because Elise had a habit of manipulating the truth to whatever audience she needed. The warning felt heavy, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the studio where Stefan worked. She arrived with a calm, composed expression, but her eyes showed the exhaustion of someone who had been watching chaos unfold from a distance. She wasted no time. She told me Stefan and Elise hadn't met accidentally at work or through friends, as Elise claimed. They had met at the studio nearly a year ago. Elise wasn't a regular client at first. She specifically started booking private training sessions with Stefan after Christmas. Marina had sensed something was off early, but she convinced herself she was overthinking. Then came the messages she found. Elise and Stefan texting late into the night. Inside jokes. Plans to meet somewhere new. Elise hinting at wanting a place where they could escape everything. Marina confronted Stefan, but he insisted it was harmless flirtation. Later, she found more messages, far less innocent. But by then Stefan had distanced himself from her emotionally. Marina looked at me with an expression filled with a strange mixture of regret and relief. She said she tried to warn him that Elise was unstable. Elise had told Stefan that I was controlling and didn't let her express her true self. Marina saw through it immediately. Elise had positioned herself as the misunderstood victim to both men, building a narrative that excused every decision she made. The part that hit hardest came next. Marina revealed Elise had been looking at apartments long before she told Stefan she was unhappy with me. She had even toured the gated complex twice in early spring. She had been planning a backup life, a life that excluded me, before our engagement photos were even taken. I thanked Marina and left with a boiling pressure under my ribs. Every revelation sharpened the betrayal. Elise hadn't fallen into temptation. She had engineered an exit route for herself while using me as the safety net. She wanted the stability of the engagement and the excitement of Stefan at the same time. I drove straight to Elise's workplace. I didn't barge in or cause a scene. I asked the receptionist if Elise was available. Before she could answer, I saw Elise standing at the end of the hallway. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She approached quickly, trying to guide me outside so no coworkers overheard anything. Her hands shook slightly as she whispered urgent requests for calm. Outside near the parking lot, she started speaking fast. She claimed she had ended things with Stefan for good. She insisted Marina was lying to stir drama. She insisted she had never loved Stefan the way she loved me. She kept repeating that she had made mistakes but wanted to repair everything. I interrupted her and asked one simple question. Why had she been touring apartments months before anything supposedly happened? Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Her hands lifted in weak gestures as though half-formed explanations were slipping through her fingers. She eventually muttered something about feeling trapped and needing space, even last winter. She admitted she had been considering leaving me, but claimed she changed her mind and decided to stay. Yet she still signed the lease. She couldn't explain why. I told her I had spoken to Marina. Elise's expression shifted instantly. Her shoulders tightened. Her eyes flickered with a sharp defensive impulse, and her voice dropped. She claimed Marina had always been jealous, unstable, and obsessed with sabotaging Stefan's relationships. She said nothing Marina told me was reliable. It was the same pattern she used with Stefan, the same pattern she likely used with half the people who questioned her decisions. Everyone became a liar except her. As she tried to pull the conversation back toward reconciliation, a coworker approached and called her name. Elise stiffened. The coworker looked uncomfortable, then mentioned the regional manager wanted to speak with her as soon as possible. Elise's face drained. She told me she would call later and hurried back inside. I watched through the glass as she met with the manager, who looked stern and disappointed. After 15 minutes, Elise walked out visibly shaken. She avoided eye contact with everyone. When she stepped outside, I could see she was holding a document. She told me she had been suspended. A client at the studio, a man Elise had flirted with before Stefan, had complained about inappropriate behavior. When the studio reviewed interactions, they found boundary violations. It wasn't criminal, but it violated workplace policies. She blamed Marina. She blamed Stefan. She blamed the manager. The only person she didn't blame was herself. I stepped back, realizing her life was crumbling in every direction. She reached for me again, but I walked away before her hand could touch my arm. I spent the next day reorganizing my life. I moved everything out of our shared apartment. The more I packed, the more lies I found. Receipts, new outfits she hid in drawers, a set of toiletries that didn't belong to either of us. She had been preparing for a life I wasn't meant to see. Elise showed up that evening, frantic again. She hammered on the door until I opened it. She entered without invitation and saw the half-empty shelves. Her voice broke immediately. She tried to pull boxes out of my hands. She insisted I didn't understand everything she went through. She said I needed to listen instead of assuming the worst. I told her I wasn't assuming anything. I had evidence. She had left a trail everywhere she went. She tried to take the lease forms from the table, but I moved them before she could. The moment she saw them again, something snapped inside her. She tried to argue that she signed the lease because she had been pressured into it by the building manager. The lie was ridiculous. The desperation made it even more hollow. Then she made a new claim. She said she only moved some personal things into Stefan's apartment when she felt overwhelmed. She claimed she never fully lived there and that I had exaggerated what I saw. I walked to the closet and pulled out a second copy of the lease, the one I found at our apartment. I held it in front of her. She reached for it again, but I pulled it away. I asked her why she had signed multiple versions months apart. She stared at it like it was a weapon aimed at her. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. I didn't stop there. I opened my banking app and showed her the withdrawals from our joint savings. First the deposit, then 3 months of rent payments. She collapsed onto the couch with a sharp exhale, burying her face again like she wanted the world to shut down around her. I told her she had used my name to sign a lease and my money to pay for a life with someone else. She didn't deny it. She only begged me not to report it. She insisted she would pay it back. She promised she would do anything I asked if I just kept it between us. Her desperation didn't move me. It only clarified how far she had fallen. She stayed on the couch while I packed the last things. When I finished, she blocked the doorway again. This time she didn't scream or plead with force. She spoke quietly, shakily, like a person whose foundation had finally collapsed. She said she knew Stefan wouldn't take her back. She said her job was at risk. She said people in her life were turning away from her. She said she was scared. I told her choices have consequences. She reached for my arm one more time. I stepped past her. She didn't follow. That night, I received a call from the leasing office. The building manager wanted to speak with me about the fraudulent signature on the lease. He said Elise had informed them that I was aware of everything and had approved it. I told him the truth. He said they would begin a verification process and possibly contact law enforcement. It was the first time I heard real fear in Elise's voice when she called later. She begged me to lie and say I had signed willingly. She said she couldn't handle losing everything at once. Her voice broke so hard it sounded like she could barely breathe. I told her I wasn't lying for her. The leasing office called again the next morning. This time the building manager sounded more formal. He said their legal team had reviewed the documents and compared signatures from public records. They concluded the signature on the lease did not match samples of mine they accessed through background checks. He said they needed an in-person statement to complete the fraud report. I agreed to meet them later that afternoon. Before I left, I received another message from Marina. She said Stefan had learned Elise told the leasing office that he pressured her to sign the lease. She warned me that he was furious and wanted answers. She said he planned to confront Elise that same day. Knowing their dynamic, the collision felt inevitable. I arrived at the leasing office early. The manager ushered me inside and asked a series of questions. I explained that Elise had used my ID information during a period when she handled our paperwork, and I never reviewed the documents she submitted. The manager took a long breath and said Elise would face consequences once the report was processed. It wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was administrative, predictable, and precise. When I stepped out of the building, I saw Stefan waiting near the parking lot. His expression was tight, his posture rigid. He hadn't noticed me yet. I stayed back and watched him walk toward the entrance with quick, sharp steps before disappearing inside. The collision had begun. A few hours later, Elise called me, speaking so fast I could barely understand her. She said Stefan had confronted her in the lobby. He demanded to know whether she had told the building manager that he forced her to sign the lease. She tried denying it, but the leasing agent had repeated the exact claim she made during her panic. Stefan realized she had blamed him as soon as she felt pressured. Elise said he called her manipulative and unstable. He said he should have listened to Marina. He accused her of using him for excitement while keeping me as backup. He said she lied to everyone and didn't care who got burned as long as she got what she wanted. Elise didn't defend herself. That was the new development. The confrontation had hit a level where even she couldn't twist the truth fast enough. She told me she ran outside in tears, and Stefan walked away without looking back. I listened without responding. Her words came out in frantic bursts. She said everything was falling apart. She asked if I could come over so we could talk calmly. She insisted she was alone and needed support. I told her I had nothing to offer. She went silent, then asked if I was willing to hear her out face to face. I agreed to meet her, not because reconciliation was possible, but because closure was necessary. I chose a public space, a coffee shop surrounded by people, so she couldn't escalate into something chaotic or manipulative. When she arrived, she looked exhausted. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes swollen, her voice quiet. She sat down across from me and placed her phone face down on the table. She stared at her hands for several seconds before speaking. She said she never expected everything to collapse at the same time. She said she thought she could keep her work, her engagement, and her relationship with Stefan separate. She admitted she wanted all of it. The stability, the excitement, the thrill of being wanted, the comfort of being safe. She said she kept convincing herself she would choose one life eventually, but she didn't want to let go of either. I asked why she kept lying, even when confronted with evidence. She looked at me with a kind of vulnerability that didn't feel honest, more like exhaustion had stripped away her defenses. She said she lied because the truth meant losing everything. She said she thought she could outrun consequences if she just delayed them long enough. I stayed silent. She kept talking. She said she never intended to hurt me. She said she loved me, but she couldn't stop herself from seeking attention from someone who made her feel desired. She said she felt trapped by the expectation that she should be satisfied with what she had. Her words revealed a truth she didn't seem to recognize. She wasn't in love with me. She was in love with what I provided: stability, comfort, structure. With Stefan, she felt excitement. With me, she felt safety. She wanted both at the same time, without realizing she had to choose. When she finally stopped talking, she looked up at me with a trembling expression. She asked whether I could forgive her. She asked whether there was a chance to fix anything. She asked whether I still wanted the wedding. Before I could answer, someone approached the table. Stefan. He looked furious, but not chaotic. Controlled fury. The kind that comes from betrayal layered on betrayal. He stared at Elise and asked why she had told him I was just a roommate she planned to move away from. Elise's eyes widened. She stammered, unable to form words. He turned to me and apologized for ever being involved. He said he didn't know she was engaged. He said she convinced him that I was an emotionally distant roommate who barely acknowledged her. He said she told him she was single in everything except legal paperwork. The air tightened between us. Then came the second twist. The leasing office had contacted Stefan earlier. They told him Elise attempted to place the blame for the fraudulent signature on him. They told him Elise claimed he pressured her into signing. She had tried throwing him under the bus the moment consequences approached. He looked at Elise with an expression that showed complete detachment. He said he hoped she got help. Then he walked away. Elise didn't follow him this time. She sat there staring at the table with her jaw clenched and her breathing sharp. She looked like someone who had lost every layer of protection she built. The third twist arrived minutes later. Her phone buzzed. She flipped it over and saw the sender. Her former supervisor. She opened the message, and her face crumpled. Her suspension had turned into termination. The complaint from the client wasn't isolated. They had found a pattern of inappropriate behavior masked as friendliness. Her professional license would be under review due to ethical violations. She whispered something, but it didn't form a sentence. She set the phone down slowly. Her hands shook. I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt distant, as though everything unfolding belonged to someone else. She asked again if there was any path forward. Not out of love, but out of fear. The fear was palpable. She wanted something familiar to cling to while everything else collapsed. I told her the truth. I couldn't build a life with someone who built two lives behind my back. I couldn't walk down an aisle knowing she had rehearsed exit plans months before saying yes. I couldn't partner with someone who forged my signature to escape accountability. She lowered her head. The silence between us felt heavy enough to tilt the room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, finally understanding there was no leverage, no story to twist, no angle left to manipulate. When I stood to leave, she didn't try to stop me. She looked at the wall behind me as though her mind had detached entirely. The consequences came fast. The leasing office filed the fraud report. Elise faced charges for falsifying legal documents tied to my identity. The building issued penalties for unauthorized residency and voided her lease. She was required to pay additional fees she couldn't afford. Her job was gone. Her license review was underway. Her reputation at the fitness studio resurfaced through gossip. Marina posted a detailed account of everything Elise had done, and the story spread among mutual acquaintances. Stefan left town 2 weeks later. He took a job in another city and didn't give Elise his new number. I moved into a new apartment. Smaller, quieter, and far more peaceful. I finished my extra DoorDash shifts because the honeymoon fund had become savings for a new life. One night, while delivering an order, I drove past the gated luxury complex again. The guard recognized me. He stopped me at the entrance and apologized for what happened weeks earlier. He said Elise had lied to him too, claiming I authorized her to use my information.